Wow. Just wow. What an episode. Let's talk about it. This is Unraveling the Pattern. I'm Lauren. Welcome. Now, for those of you who are returning, yes, I have seen the entire season of The Wheel of Time Season 3, but this is just my review and thoughts about Episode 4. No spoilers this time, except for anything related to the books up to this point. If you're concerned about spoilers, as always, check the description for a full spoiler warning. I'm just going to give you my raw reactions and thoughts to Season 3, Episode 4, The Road to the Spear. Typically with these reviews, I start with the good, then I talk about the bad, the confusing, sometimes the ugly, and then I get into the great and the surprising. So let's get started. The good. There is no good. Sorry. The bad and confusing. There's really no bad or confusing either. Let's get into the great and the surprising. This episode for me was 10 out of 10. The best episode we've seen of the show so far, and genuinely for me, one of the top best episodes of TV I've ever seen. Maybe not the very top, but very close for me. I just adored this episode. So many good things happen in it. I'm not going to break it down line by line. I'm going to talk a lot about it in my Unraveled video. And by the way, if you're new to my channel and you're watching this review, you should know that these reviews are just me kind of off the cuff sharing my thoughts and giving my rating of episodes. But in reality, the videos that I'm most proud of and that I put a lot of time and effort into is my episode Unraveled videos. They're basically breakdowns where I talk about Easter eggs, lore, mysteries, all kinds of stuff, theories. I would love it if you would check those out. Those are the videos that I work hard on that I really hope that people will watch. They're for non-book readers and for book fans, so please check those out. Also, I have a pretty lofty goal of trying to get to 50,000 subscribers by the end of Season 3. I know that's a big goal, but that's what I'm shooting for. So if you haven't yet subscribed, please do me a favor, subscribe to Unraveling the Pattern and turn on notifications so you don't miss future videos. All right, let's talk about the episode. In all seriousness, I do have a few tiny nitpicks, but they're all related to things I wish had been there because they were in the books. But I really am serious when I say this was just an incredible episode. So much of the dialogue came straight out of The Shadow Rising, Book 4, where these chapters came from. And for those of you who haven't read the books, these are pretty much, for most people, the most beloved chapters of all of the Wheel of Time series. That doesn't mean that the Wheel of Time series gets worse from here. It just gets better and better in a lot of ways. But these chapters are just almost perfect in every way. And Robert Jordan just really nailed it with these chapters. And so this was one of the episodes that I had the most anxiety about because, I've been imagining these chapters for almost 30 years now. And so I was nervous, but I have to say this episode was everything I hoped for. I love right from the start, Lan and Rand actually talked about the flame and the void, and that Tam had taught that to Rand. That was actually dialogue I'd been hoping for and I'd been talking about since before the season aired, before I saw any of the season. And so to hear that dialogue right at the start just got me so hyped. And then from there, I saw a lot of pushback when that clip that released early of Aviendha fighting with Lan came out. Everyone was really upset about it. Not everyone, but a lot of people were upset about that. And it didn't bother me at all, but it's because I had seen the episode and I knew that that led into what eventually became Aviendha being called out by the Wise Ones for not meeting her toe and then having her spears broken and being sent to Ruidion. And so I think in the context of knowing that was happening, that scene didn't bother me at all. To me, that scene was Aviendha throwing her last tantrum as a maiden, being upset and, sort of deflecting her anger or projecting her anger onto others. And Lan was just kind of having a good time with it. That's how I saw that scene. It wasn't about one defeating the other. It was just them sparring and having a good time. And mostly Aviendha throwing a tantrum, blowing off steam. So when Bear approached her and then shared that really great story about how she too was a maiden who resisted her duty to the people, that really worked for me. And the acting from Bear in that scene was just phenomenal. And Aviendha too. Anyway, I love the setup. What shocked me when I rewatched this episode was that it's almost 20 minutes of episode before we even get into Ruidion, which surprised me because when I watched the episode the first time, I thought the entire episode was pretty much Rand's visions with a few of Moraine's visions thrown in. But actually, there was a lot of buildup. There was a lot of setup, introduction of Savannah and Couladin, as they call him, information about Muradin, as they call him. I'm trying to stick to the pronunciation from the show as I do these videos, but all of that just really flowed for me. It didn't feel exposition heavy. It felt like just the right amount for me. And then entering Ruidion, so beautiful. I was so hopeful when they first walked in and you saw these sort of close-ups of Rand and Moiraine with like the toes of these giant statues. I was like, please show the full scene. Please show the full statues. So then when the camera panned out, I was like, yes, that's so awesome. Seeing sort of the epic size of the city was really wonderful. If I have one tiny nitpick, it's that the city just doesn't really do justice to the city that's described in the books. Matt and Rand are described as walking an entire mile through this massively advanced but half-finished city before they reach the center. And then when they reach the center, if you look at it from above, it's described as looking like a wheel, where there's basically there's 7 different like routes that have been made, or trails that have been made to the center. And it's just, the center of the city is just completely filled with objects of the One Power, Sangreal, Angreal, Terangreal. And it's just so cluttered with this stuff that people have pushed it aside to make these trails. And if you look at it from above, it's described as looking almost like a wheel with 7 spokes, where the center is Avendasora, the Tree of Life. I would have liked to see that, but I also recognize the show has limitations. And to me, considering their budget limitations, considering all the things they had to do in this episode, it was really just so tightly written, tightly edited. Like I said, the dialogue a lot of it straight from Robert Jordan. Just I can't believe they pulled it off. I said this in my full season review, that typically when I go into these episodes, I'm nervous and I'm anxious about what they're going to leave out. And then as I watch the episode, I get a little bit disappointed when they leave things out, but I also like what they've chosen to do. And then I kind of have this time afterwards of sort of going, okay, well, I understand why they did what they did. I was sort of disappointed they didn't include X, Y, or Z, but I give them the benefit of the doubt. I rewatch it. I enjoy it a lot more on rewatch. That anxiety's gone. I notice details. I really appreciate what they're going for. With this episode, all of that anxiety just melted away. I loved it from start to finish. I just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe they pulled it off. And I even wrote down, and I said this in my full season review, I wrote down after watching this episode, I felt like I was sitting under the Chora tree, that I was feeling the peace and contentment that comes from Avendasora. It really was just that kind of episode for me. It nailed all of the emotional resonant moments that I wanted, and then some. So I know I'm being kind of vague here, but you've seen the episode at this point, I hope, or you shouldn't be watching this. I will say in the books, there are 9 visions that Rand experiences. In the show, he experienced 7, but I thought they did a really good job of pulling in certain details from some of those missing visions and then including them in other visions or including them in dialogue. One of the big ones was Moiraine talking about the Aiel and the Kyrianan people had these connections. And that's why the Tree of Life sapling was given. I just thought all of that was just really well done. And I really appreciated that they included some of the dialogue that helped fill in the gaps from the visions they couldn't show. And then, of course, the addition of Moraine's visions, so cool. I wrote it down in my notes. I don't remember the exact number right now, but something like 16 new scenes or shots from Moraine's point of view of a future vision. Considering she saw thousands upon thousands of infinite future possibilities, it's kind of amazing that they only showed us 16 to 20 actual shots. But I love that sequence. I thought it was really brilliantly done, how the camera's kind of constantly moving and it's just this constant barrage of visions from Moraine's point of view. And then she gets more and more sort of frantic and almost terrified as the visions continue. I thought that was brilliant. By far, my favorite part of the episode was just Yosha Stradowski's acting as all the different characters from his ancestry. That was so well done. I know that Yosha has probably gotten some flack for being Rand, or some people are like, when is Rand going to get his moment? If you don't think Rand got his moment after this episode, I mean, I don't know what to tell you. This was just incredible. He played each character to perfection, in my opinion. One really fun thing is in one of the visions, it was from Lewin's perspective. There was a sort of like Rand, Matt, and Perrin equivalent in that scene where there was like 3 friends. In the books, I went back and read it. Lewin had 4 other friends, I believe. So they just cut it down to 2 friends. And I thought that was just so phenomenal that they all kind of looked like Rand, Matt, and Perrin. Of course, Rand really looked like Rand because it was the same actor. But man, I got to tell you, one of the scenes that just so stood out to me was when Lewin returned after committing violence and saving his sisters from those bad people. And his mother, her acting just really hit me, the way she was like, cover your face, and getting so emotional. And then Lewin just being so emotional, like, Mom, don't leave me. That scene just made me tear up, to be honest. I was really impressed by it. And then another moment that really made me tear up was the very end when Rand and Moiraine return from Ruidion, and they both kind of have this 1,000-yard stare after they've experienced this thing. And they kind of make eye contact, or at least Moraine looks at Rand, and they have this sort of understanding they didn't have before. They've both been through some trauma, not the same trauma, but they've been through similar experiences. And there's the final shot of the episode is Rand just kind of looking into space with the 1,000-yard stare, and a single tear runs down his cheek. And I don't know, the swelling of the music, everything that just really affected me. This is the theme of the Wheel of Time that I love. These young people called to be heroes, whether or not they want it, and then having to learn how to cope with trauma and learning to be heroes despite their difficulties. And Rand just understanding what the Aiel went through and all of the things that came with the history that made him who he was, the way he connected the dots earlier in the episode where he was like, all of those things had to happen. The Aiel War had to happen. The Tree of Life, the sapling had to be given to the Kyrianan people, and then King Layman had to chop down the tree, and then all of that had to happen just so that his mother would be there at the right moment on Dragonmount, so that prophecy would be fulfilled and he would be born there. And anyway, obviously, just loving this episode. Another absolutely favorite moment was the drilling of the boar. How terrifying was that? I was listening to it with headphones, and it was pretty loud. And when the Dark One or the boar opens, whatever that is that they're showing there, and I'm not sure if they're showing the Dark One, I'm not sure what it is, but it seemed to me like it was the Dark One kind of looking through. And the sound in that scene, and the sort of like, there was 6 frames, I counted 6 frames where they zoom in on the crack of the boar, and then they zoom in even further. There's like 2 frames kind of zoomed in, and then there's 1 frame super zoomed in, and then there's 3 frames sort of medium zoomed in, and it just looks like cracks and reflections and this dark entity of sorts there behind the scenes with the sound design. It really terrified me in a great way. It was really cool. Another thing that really excited me, they talked about the true power, and I was just surprised that they did that. One thing that I believe has changed from the books, and maybe this is just Mierin or Lanfear not understanding, but she's like, my understanding is once we tap into this new power, anyone will be able to use it, any regular person. And in the books, to be able to use the true power, you still have to be able to channel. You still have to have the ability to channel. So I actually kind of like that change. I think it makes it more interesting, especially because, and I'll be talking about this in my breakdown, but in one of those flashes of the future where Moraine is in the ways and all of the Emmonsfield 5 or the Two Rivers 5 and Moghedien are with Lanfear in the ways, and they're sort of cornering Moraine, and then Lanfear slices Moraine's throat. I looked close and I couldn't tell on every single person, but Perrin has that ring that the Aes Sedai of the Age of Legends have. And so I'm thinking in that scene, they're all meant to be Forsaken. Elaine, Egwene, Nynaeve, Mat, Perrin, Rand, of course, Moghedien, and Lanfear are meant to be the Forsaken in that future. And so that was really interesting to me too. Does this mean that the Dark One grants people like Perrin and Mat the ability to channel the true power? Really cool concept. I know I'm rambling as I do, and people are like, oh, you don't need to apologize for rambling in the comments. You're all kind. I like scripted content. I like really thinking through all this stuff, outlining what I'm going to say, scripting my videos, and then doing a lot of really good editing. And so with these, since I'm just rambling, I feel like they're not worth your time. But don't worry, I'm not like, I don't feel bad about it or anything. I enjoy talking about the Wheel of Time. It's a little weird for me to talk to a camera instead of to actual people. But anyway, I don't know what more there is to say. 10 out of 10 episode for me. I'm sure there's so much detail that will come out. I'm really trying hard to get my next Unraveling video out before episode 5. My script is way too long right now. It's like 10 pages long and it's not even finished. And so I'm going to try to pare that down. But my plan is to map out each vision from Rand and then talk about it chronologically while pointing out details and trying to tell the story of the Aiel history, the history of the Avendasora Tree of Life, and the history of the Sakarnan, all kind of along that. So it's a big thing. I'm mapping it all out. I'm going to make some new graphics for this. This is something I'm really excited to do. And then, of course, talking about each of the shots in Moraine's vision. I plan on breaking those down too, in a similar way to how I break down trailers, where I talk about each shot and kind of point out little details. So anyway, that should be coming soon. If you haven't already subscribed to my channel, please do so. I have a lofty goal to try to get 50,000 subscribers by the end of season 3. At the rate I've been going, I think I can hit it, but anything you can do to help share what I do would be so helpful. And if you'd like, please consider supporting me on Patreon or on YouTube for as little as $1 per month. You can even join on Patreon as a free member, and you'll get access to certain things like some early access and other things. So Join where you can, like the video, share the video. I appreciate all of you watching my channel. And until next time, let the dragon ride again on the winds of Prime.